Hello and welcome to Universal Law Snippets. I am Christy Sturdivant and I am coming at you this month with the law of gender, which, disclaimer right out front, the law of gender has nothing to do with our identity or sexual identity or anything like that. So we're just going to push that out of the way. And I have to be honest and also say that this is a law that has really, I don't want to say stumped me because I understand it, but I've never fully been able to explain it because I could never really visualize it up until this month. And so I have been mulling over everything a lot. And I think I have a pretty good analogy to explain this law. And you're going to have to forgive me if you are a scientific type of person. I may be getting some of these terms mixed up. I am not a scientific person per se. I know the basic gist of things. And so if I mess up any terms, forgive me, but hopefully you'll be able to follow along. Okay. So when we were talking about the law of gender, according to the Kybalion and the Emerald tablets and everything, they always refer to it in terms of electricity, which is not something I understand completely. I know the gist of it, but I can't get into the scientific data. But basically what it is there are two poles of energy inside of us. And I think the best way for me to visualize this personally is to think of us each as a battery, like a little, very powerful AA, AAA battery that we are all like little batteries moving through this world, okay? And when I talk about a battery, I'm doing this because here's how a battery works. If you are not familiar completely how a battery works, much like I am. Okay, so in a battery, you have two poles, and they are made up of that little cathode at the top where you plug into the plus sign, and then you have the anode in the bottom, which plugs into the negative sign. Your cathode is your positive electricity. Your anode is your negative electricity or electrical atom or whatever. Okay. And so when you have those plugged into something like a remote control or something, that gives it a current to move it through the battery. Okay. That's how your remote control works. Now, inside of a battery, there is a little separator that goes right between, right in the middle of this battery. And that keeps your battery from wearing down. It's just enough to where when it's plugged into an electrical current, the current can go through that little separator and make a circuit so that you have power. Okay. Now, if it's just the battery is just plain, the separator keeps the battery from running down and not being workable. Now that we have all that out of the way, the sciencey portion of everything. Okay, now as I see this, we are all batteries that have a cathode, which we will now call masculine or the divine masculine energy in us. And we have an anode, which is what we will call the divine feminine energy. Now imagine when you are being born and you're coming out into the world and you're a little baby, okay? You are this beautiful, pure energy that is just kind of running through life. You're just running on your circuitry, right? You have maybe a very thin little separator that is separating this current, but it's not really much of anything, right? It's very thin, much like it would be if you had a battery. Okay. Now, as we get older and we are plugged into different environments or different situations, or we are around certain people, we will say that separator gets maybe a little bit thicker. Because in my mind, the separator is like our perception of reality, okay? And so that separator gets a little bit thicker, thus separating our divine masculine from our divine feminine. And this might be where you perhaps feel one of those energies a little bit more than the other, depending on which environment you are plugged into. Okay? And it's really interesting because when we are little kids, right, like we make connections and we learn about life and we learn about reality based on what we perceive, and we make associations, right? So like mom and dad could equal safety. Big dump truck coming down the street is not safe. And we make all of these associations when we are little, whether or not they be good or bad. That's just how we are as children. Like our subconscious it's constantly being programmed through this series of associations until we're about 7 years old, when we start like kind of more conceptualizing what is going on around us. Okay. During this time, how you are raised is going to kind of build up that little separator, which we will call a reality. So if you're a battery and one side of you is, your divine masculine, which is the part of you that kind of takes action and pushes you forward and gives you momentum to do things in life. And then your divine feminine, which kind of reflects what is going on around you, leans into your intuition, and kind of like is allowing things to come in front to you as opposed to pushing out. That separator is what we perceive our reality. Okay, are you with me so far? I hope so. Okay, so this is what I think about when I think of the law of gender. Is we are these batteries, and the reality or the perception of the reality around us is something that builds up over time until we kind of take a step back and then it's like, we don't need that anymore, right? This is where the healing comes in, where we can come in and be like, this used to be part of my identity because I did not feel safe around this type of situation anymore. But now I don't have to have that anymore because that's not my reality anymore. So I'm just going to let that go. And as we go through life and we begin healing these parts of ourselves, our separation or our separator, it gets a little bit thinner, and it makes the current between our divine masculine and our divine feminine flow a little bit easier. Now, sometimes, we can like go ahead and push through those currents, or we will be in some situation or environment where those currents flow a little bit easier. But I think I don't want to say goal, but maybe like the ideal situation would be to have like just a very thin layer to where that current can move forward or through us in a more easier time, right? And that's why it's very helpful to shed old versions of yourself, or shift your identity, or do some of those, clear out some of those energetic bunnies that we were talking about in earlier episodes, because when we do that, our energy can flow through us more easily, and we can start to get into those creative flows where we are, in the zone and we're doing something that we love for like 6 hours straight, and we don't even know where the time is. Okay. So that is like the easiest way for me to understand this law. It's a very vast and interesting law, like they all are. But I think that having it in terms of a self-contained battery was really helpful for me to kind of understand that we all have both of these very powerful energies inside of us, but our currents might just be blocked due to, whatever we went through in our lives. And I feel like knowing that we can like kind of just shoo those things away is just really helpful. And the goal is to have that current working all the time. And so that when we plug into an environment, we don't get triggered by whatever is going on around us. We can just plug in and be like, oh, now this current is it's still working in the same way it is, right? That's how we want to get rid of our triggers so that we don't like throw up that shield and then block any intuition or forward momentum, which is our divine masculine and our divine feminine. So that's the basics. I'm trying to demystify this concept of the law of gender because it's been something that's kind of bothered me that I was not able to conceptualize it for a long time. But for me, this visual works, and I hope it does for you too. And if you have anything to add, please definitely, reach out to me, leave it in the comments, because I think that when we know that we have both of these super incredibly powerful energies inside of us, it kind of shifts everything, right? Because when that current is flowing through and we are like having that beautiful current between the divine masculine and the divine feminine, that is where the magic of manifestation happens, right? That is where we are creating things and we are like bringing things into our lives, which I think is so cool. So that is all I have for you guys today. I hope that was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye.